Good evening, everybody. This is Divided as We Stand on Saturday night, the 2nd of December. Boy, time is flying, and we're ready to get to 2024 already. One day you wake up and you say, this life's getting short here. That's kind of depressing to think, but look, we're all in the same boat, I suppose. So, yes, this is Divided We Stand on YouTube. You can also find us on Facebook. We have a Facebook group page, which is somewhat popular. We ask that you join us on Facebook. If you are on Facebook, you do have to answer a couple of questions for us, a survey, and you have to agree to the rules. It helps our page. And we also ask that you subscribe to Divide We Stand. We aren't monetized. We don't ask for anything, just your subscription. And we appreciate it very much. It's been a week. Without any further ado, as I always say, this is my good buddy, my good friend from Arlington, Virginia. It is former journalist, educator, worker at the Smithsonian, and general pain in the ass.
And just retired now.
And retired.
Which is actually very nice. Hey, Brian.
Hey, Dave.
One thing, we mention it from time to time, so I'm going to mention it again this time. Anybody out there, if you recommend the page to someone, if you could put a personal note, just a brief personal note, say, please answer the acceptance questions. Because
right.
What happens is I don't keep track of all of them. I mean, they come through, but I bet you we reject 80%, probably. Right. Probably roughly around 75, 80%.
Absolutely right.
And the reason we do that is not to keep people off, but that way it shows that you at least have a commitment to do the certain things, very simple things like, no trolling and some other things. So just again, if probably most of the people who tune into this show have already invited their friends, but if you don't see them there, give them another shout out. It's a little bit more work for the people inviting. You can't just type in an invite and send it out, just with a little message saying please to make sure everything. And welcome everybody whose names are popping
around the
up
world.
Here.
Keith.
Around the world. Well, I guess we're going to start in Washington. As always, some big news out of here. And I know that you're heartbroken and sad because on Monday morning, or the next time Congress gets together, there will be no George Santos.
Certainly not.
I have to admit, first of all, I did a little bit of, little background on it. So here's your test. You ready, Brian? I wouldn't expect you to know this. I wouldn't have known it had I not looked it up. How many members of the House have been expelled in the history of America? The House.
The House.
Mm-hmm. Because Representative Santos was,
So I'm assuming from the question that it's above zero.
Yes. Well, you'll have George Santos.
Definitely.
Okay.
Well, I only know of one in my lifetime, and that would be George Santos. So I'm going to go with 4.
Very good guess. Actually, it's 6.
6. Okay.
Now, 4 of them were dismissed because they were members of the Confederacy and expelled under the idea of that amendment that we're talking about Trump, right? So they got rid of them. 2 in the modern age, you could say. One was Michael Myers, not from the movie, not from the horror movies, who was from Pennsylvania, and he got involved in the ab scam deal, if you remember that.
Oh yeah, Ozzie Myers.
Yeah,
he's the one that did the money talks and bullshit walks.
Right.
Absolutely remember him.
And of course, what was interesting, the senators that were involved in that walked away and resigned. He didn't, and of course, he was expelled. And then the other was James Traficant from Ohio.
Oh, he's a real ass. He's a Democrat. Both were Democrats.
That is correct. That'll come up in just a moment. Now, the actual numbers on Traficant were kind of significant. The vote was 420 to 1. A little bit different. Because what was 115 voted?
You're talking about Traficant?
Yeah, Traficant was 420.
With the worst toupee in the world.
Yeah, well, I
You
guess
do remember that? It looked like a vase that was just
I
placed
wonder.
to a porcelain
I should have
vase.
looked this up, and I didn't when I was doing the research. He was convicted of
I gotta
bribery,
find a picture of that son of a bitch.
tax evasion.
Oh, he was a liar from Ohio.
Yeah, and I should have looked up to see who the one person was. I assume it might have been him who voted not to throw himself out. I don't know that. You know, but the thing, honestly, I was surprised. You know, somebody said, "Oh, the vote should have been." I was surprised as few Republicans voted against his dismissal for some reasons. So I was kind of surprised with it. I think, first of all, his dismissal reduces the narrow margin. It's 5 now in the House to 4. That's not a very big margin for the Republicans.
Right.
So that was number one. You know, I could see people say, well, we can't do that. Actually, the district that he won in New York went 10 points for Biden in the election. So that's kind of an indication that probably the next representative will be a Democrat, which gives them another vote. Also, you know, you'd think that probably the Republican Party, at least in that district, there would be some backlash, and people would say, you know, paint it like, okay, you know, we just had a Republican, that didn't work out, let's go with the Democrat. The one that I really thought there were some who came out with this. He is the first person of the 6 in the House who was dismissed before a guilty plea was established. So, and you heard some of the congressmen, and it's not an idea to dismiss immediately. I mean, you should at least take it in. The voters voted him in. The voters wanted him, and now you're taking away their person. I dismiss that by saying, yeah, he didn't represent himself in any way. I don't think if he had been real, I don't think he would have won. So that doesn't bother me. But the other one that's kind of interesting, and you know, falls into the things we've been talking about, is retribution. Did you see what he came out with after the vote?
He said something to hell with this group or something like that, and then he says he's going to go after people.
So far, he's actually named 4 different Congress people.
And they're all the New Yorkers, right?
Yeah, New Yorkers who voted against him, obviously.
Right.
So what you have in that sense, he's covering his bases. A couple of the charges were, one was that a congressman was in school when he was working in a political position. So was he ripping off the taxpayers? I don't know. One was one that you hear a lot, stock manipulation. Another was, what was the third one? I can't, sure. Stock manipulation. Improper use of campaign funds, where the guy actually used his own business or a business he was involved with and got campaign funds. And then the fourth was very interesting. That was someone whose father is a senator from New Jersey. Do you know who that would be?
A senator from New Jersey?
You got 2 choices to get it right.
Well, I mean, now? Menendez, of course.
Yeah. And his son is a member of the House. And
that's
Santos
right.
Santos' charge, let's bring up the Nixon era. You know, he said, well, I understand that he isn't, but when, you know, what did he know and when did he know it? Now, earlier in the week, I don't know if you saw, they keep teasing this stuff. He was going to, I don't know if you saw that, he was going to expose the perverts and sexual deviants in the House. But none of the people that he did had any to do with that. But of course, his was, he did use some money.
But who would believe anything he has to say? You know, that's the thing.
I have 2 words for you: Donald Trump.
Okay.
I mean, you know, yeah. I mean, you know, who would believe?
Good point, Dave.
Yeah,
I forgot. I was being logical.
No, I think logic doesn't apply, as we said before. It doesn't apply when you come to the Republican Party. What did you think? I mean, and look at, again, it took them 3 votes to expel him. You had some pretty prominent, 2 of his most prominent spokespeople was your sexual fantasy, Marjorie Taylor Greene, and your other sexual fantasy, Matt Gaetz.
Just thinking of that as a fantasy is a fantasy.
Yeah. Gaetz and Greene are there to burn Congress down. So
right.
Of course,
they want everything.
Of course, they would do that. It will. Will it have any effect? Okay. What do you think, Brian? Will this have any effect at all, or is it just, okay, that's a week, we're done, we're going away?
There's so much going on right now in American politics and in the world that I think there's just nothing that really surprises anybody. And at some point, it's just overload or overkill, maybe. And in any normal world, people like Ozzie Myers, it eventually caught up with him. Traffic can, it caught up with him. Well, it did catch up with Santos, but even if he could say anything, and I just don't think it matters anymore. I mean, I think it only really mattered to the Republicans that he left because those 4 Republicans were worried about keeping their positions in New York. Otherwise, he would have stayed, I think. But as they said here, I mean, if you look at the vote, though, it was kind of impressive. It was 311 to 114.
Well, not as impressive as 420 to 1.
Well, that's true too.
I mean, now is that a fair comparison? I don't know. I think it is indicative.
23 counts.
Right.
Indicted. Just.
Well, he can't.
I mean, the man is a lie in himself. He lies about his.
Well, you know what? It would be.
And that.
Certainly, in my years as like I've said before, I mean, I never covered national politics, but I did cover state and county and local politics. And there were a lot of liars that were in politics. I never found anybody as egregious as Santos. I remember the mayor of Vineland, Pat Fiorelli, who he would lie, but it was kind of interesting. The truth didn't mean anything. He didn't. For example, okay, he made Vineland this national thing about dandelion festivals. You probably didn't follow any of that because you were up at Cherry Hill then. But it became this national news story. But I was on ABC this morning. He was on NBC. So, as a reporter, you had to double check everything just to make sure it wasn't great. He just didn't pay attention.
But obviously there are liars out there. I remember it's just the one thing where he said, "I am Jew-ish." Just the word, the suffix "ish." Yeah, it's just. Why did he have to go that far? It was such an outlandish comment. It's so. I mean, he's an absurdity.
Because that's what he does.
It's It's Kafkaesque. That's what it is. It's like he's metamorphosized into to just some other thing than being a human being. He's just that fucking sick.
Well, I think as I say, I don't know. I'd love to have a crystal ball and be able to tell you what's going to happen. I'll predict that there will be a Democrat take his seat. That much I feel relatively confident in saying.
And I don't think the Republicans care as much as we think they would, because when Santos becomes a hindrance to the party.
But how many voted for him?
114, I think.
114 don't seem as a hindrance to the party.
Yeah, 114, and I'm wondering. I would imagine that Van Drew voted for. I mean, I don't know, but I guess he would.
No, actually, I did check that out.
Good.
I wanted to check that out. Van Drew voted to expel him, which is, for those who don't know, Van Drew is the congressman where Brian is now in New Jersey. And
unfortunately, he's our
also where I lived for 6 decades. So we'll have to wait and see. I think it would be interesting. What does George Santos know? What will be true? Certainly has nothing to lose by bringing up names.
Because he could just, even if it was somewhat true, he could exaggerate too. He's such a slippery individual.
You know what I thought was interesting too, and I don't know what to make of this. He was a Trump supporter, but Trump didn't say anything about this.
No, I guess he didn't. It's kind of like abortion. He didn't want to deal with that.
Yeah, I think Jeff's onto something there. I mean, had figured out how to be a Republican, but he just was. I mean, you can't lie about everything. A couple other interesting facts before we leave Mr. Santos for this week. He now has the distinction of being the first Republican House member ever expelled. The other 5 were all Democrats. Now, remember with the Civil War ones, they were, that's when the Democrats were the Republicans. I mean, they were conservatives back in Lincoln's time. And then the other 2, Ozzie Meyer and Jeff Kent, were both Democrats. So, will it have, what impact? Again, you ask what impact? At least this time, not by maybe the margin I'd like. I'd also like that 420-1 margin with him. But we saw the process work. When we talk about Trump tonight, you always have to question, is the process working or is it not with him? But certainly in this case, it did indeed work. Now, will Fox News have him on? Will Newsmax have him on? Will he become a commentator?
That's a good point. Will Fox News? I'm going to guess that they won't now that he's out.
I would agree. But then, the new kids in town, Newmax and the other, to the right of Fox stations, I'd sign him up if I were them. Why not?
Oh, you mean not just interview him, but actually have him on?
Why not? What do you have to lose?
Nope. I
would.
Can he handle a position like? I mean, how would he even perform as an anchor of some sort?
Well, he needs some money because he won't be able to continue on that porn site he was paying with taxpayers' money. I mean, that's what
he does. Still have some, things he's going to receive, some perks, even though he's been removed. Yeah. I mean, he won't have a security detail. Right. I think if that's anything he'd worry about. I mean, I don't know that anybody would be after him, but.
Well, I know of at least one congressman who actually they say was very instrumental in getting switch votes because he got trapped into that. He contributed to his campaign. He saw that his money went. So it wasn't like, he's just doing. Now, global solidarity, that's interesting. There's a lot. I certainly think, again, not judging a book by its cover, but there's certainly tendencies of that we see.
Yeah, I think he's a self-hating homosexual.
Well, could you really be a non-self-hating homosexual and be in the Republican Party? I don't know. I don't know that you could. And again, as we said, it'll be interesting. I don't think his name will be mentioned anymore in the halls of Congress unless it comes out with these charges, right?
That's
funny. And then we'll hear him.
Jeff, you're nailing it tonight here.
Well, well, Kyle's got to push his book. He's got a book coming out.
It's called Acquitted.
Right? Yeah. Yeah, he was acquitted. All right. Just think, man. Kyle Rittenhouse and Marjorie Taylor Greene have books out, and none of their supporters read. Many of them can't.
They wouldn't even use the audio book.
No, it's
because they can't sit still.
It's an amazing time. Now, even on a quiet week, of course, Mr. Trump still makes news, right? In a number of ways.
I'm going to put one thing just for it's only 7 seconds,
Sure.
But it was just interesting because I saw this. I'm going to have to put my system audio on for a second here. And
Benedict Arnold.
Yeah, let me just make sure I have my settings correct. Scenes, audio. All right, let's see if I can play this here. I thought it was just interesting that he said this.
But we've been waging an all-out war in American democracy.
Oh my God, he admitted.
But we.
Yeah, I mean, you heard that, correct?
Say it again. Do it again, because that was quick.
Yeah,
yes, I did.
I think you need to see this again. Just listen. I mean, it's simple, but.
But we've been waging an all-out war in American democracy.
Oh my God, he admitted.
But we've been waging an all-out war in American democracy.
Yeah,
right.
absolutely.
Let's look at that, okay? Is that, and again, we're allowed to speculate, is that Donald Trump making a statement that he knows and believes in? In other words, with Trump, that's, I mean, that, is he just saying that because he thinks that what people want to hear?
Mm-hmm.
Or his supporters want to hear? Does he really believe that? If he does, wow.
Which means he wants to go all the way. Because if you're willing to admit that you don't like democracy, he's trying to say, my people.
Why would he like democracy?
Right.
He certainly didn't run his businesses that way. Of course, he ran his businesses into the ground. By the way, quick aside,
on purpose.
This is how important this show is for me to do, Brian. Tonight, I got a personal invite from Miss Stormy Daniels, who is in town.
It's funny. I was just talking with Ron tonight. I said, Dave hasn't mentioned her name for like 2 years.
Well,
you must be feeling really well, Dave.
No, it's just. I laughed. They have every year they have an Exotica XXXXX convention at the Dulles Convention Center, and this year Stormy is there. What's interesting though is Donald Trump may be leading the polls, but Stormy apparently is dropping a little bit because there's about 9 people promoted ahead of her. Alexis Texas and some of the other porn stars that are bigger.
I mean, is she still doing that stuff or no?
No. Actually, she went. Which is interesting. She was in New Orleans. This is a few years ago, and she claims that she got a revelation that she could be like a seer, doing fortunes, and so she started doing that for a while. One of my former students does music for a lot of the porn movies, and he's there this weekend. And he knows her. I mean, not like best friends, but knows her. He got a private meeting with her, so she could tell him his fortune. So I don't know. Again, names of the past. I mean, think about it. She really will. I mean, she'll be a footnote in history, just a footnote, but
she made it.
Yeah, and she's actually, like I said, I've seen her a few times. She's actually a very interesting person, but of course, she kind of loses me when she says, I understand it, but she says, I don't know why I did it. Well, yeah, I know why you did it, Stormy. You did it for your advantages. Of course, that's...
Like Monica Lewinsky and anybody else who's made the news.
I mean, power is power. And whether we like it or not, Donald Trump, both as a businessman, as a TV personality, and as president, certainly has power. Now the question becomes will he abuse that power? And the answer, of course, is yes. And I think we see where it's going now. Now in the Georgia trial, right? So many trials. There's the New York trial, there's this trial, and the Washington trial. But in the Georgia trial, his attorney this week said the following: any trial from Trump would have to wait until after the election. He said that if you were to have him on trial during the campaign, that would interfere with the election, and that is illegal. Now think about that for a moment. The very thing we're charging him, or America's charging him with doing, interfering with the election,
right?
His attorney, one of his attorneys, is going to turn around. I mean, that's the kind of thing. Like Trump, does he understand that if he didn't do that, then he can't be president? I mean, then he wasn't president the whole time. I mean, is that what he's going to say? Well, he was. And I who knows? I mean, with Trump, again, we've got George Santos on.
Well, isn't it just to muck everything up, Dave? Just to keep coming up with these little things that the attorney can bring up that just takes more and more time.
And then
until something sticks.
Same in the Georgia trial. He said, but definitely, he could not be on trial as president because the supremacy clause prohibits interfering with a president's constitutional duties. So, like you say, mucking it up.
I think, Dave, he has more chance in going to jail for violating some of the judge's orders than for the actual trials themselves. I think that's where you get them.
But you know what? Those penalties aren't that great.
Well, can you stick his ass in jail?
Well, I got stuck in jail for
even if it's for a week or whatever. I mean, I can't even see it happening for an hour.
Order and but well, the question becomes, Brian, and we keep saying that the question because it's really is. We're just filled with questions. I mean, this is so uncertain. We haven't been there.
Our legal system means nothing anymore if it goes this way.
Right, and of course, looming out there, which you point out on a regular basis, looming out there is the idea that he's going to win. He's going to win.
Or the idea that Biden is so bad that he's...
And if he's going to win, then Americans really don't care about democracy. You cannot support Donald Trump and care about democracy. Or you have a warped, deviant view of what democracy is.
Then everybody flees. Like you and people like you and I are the kind of people who are going to flee if it happens. I mean, how do you even fight it? It's like, you cannot fight cancer actively. You're just a passive sitter and you're dealing with it. I mean,
well, I guess, we'll talk about that as the election gets closer. I think one way, I don't know, if I say to anybody who has any free money, and not many of us do, but some of us do use money for political contributions, this is a time to really look at it wisely and use it wisely. Now,
a lot of people like us, we did put money into the Georgia races, and that was money well spent.
And it was. That's the idea. And a race that I would look into, of course, is Biden-Trump. If I were going to send any money, I'm going to send it to Biden, and I probably will make a contribution. You say, well, it gets lost, but at least it's what the old saying, put your money where your mouth is. And I think there's something to be said about that. A race that I think, of course, is crucial, too, is in Montana, John Tester, who's been a good Democrat. I wouldn't, for example, spend any money in West Virginia, because that...
Do you have that I think, much of a lack of faith in the people of West Virginia?
Oh, no question. Mm-hmm. There's no question. West Virginia is a Republican state. Okay, it happened to elect a Democrat who was more Republican, or as much, not.
In a certain sense, he was a real danger because he could get within the party and cause problems.
Right. And then you look at your other states that are, again, just bear repeating. If you live in Pennsylvania, Ohio, Michigan, Minnesota, Nevada, Arizona, possibly North Carolina, but I don't know, and Georgia. I don't know. That they're the states that are going to decide it, and certainly Mr. Trump, as we see already, is going to use trying to use the trials to his advantage.
Mm-hmm. And he has the governors behind him too in those states, and that's a problem in many of the states.
Yeah, and that's
going to become a big issue.
Now, a lot of people were hoping that the 14th Amendment would be used to keep him off the ballots. That's not progressing well. 3 states have already said no. Yes, and we're going to talk about that too a little bit. Newsom and DeSantis. And Koch is backing Nikki Haley. She beats Biden by a big margin in polling. Yes. The question is, can she beat Donald Trump? And the numbers right now say she can't. Right? Now, that's today. I understand it. But I just don't see it, Brian. Maybe you see it, or maybe somebody who's watching tonight or listening and watching. I don't see what stops Trump now. Nothing. What stops him? He's got a 40-point lead in Iowa.
The only thing that can stop him is his own health. That's about it. If something happened to him.
Right.
And you've only got a year now. Because once he gets in, that's it. And again, think about it. If he gets in, that's it. It's like Warner Brothers. That's all, folks. It really is. That's all. It's like the Wizard of Oz, but she never gets home.
Yeah, there was a really good. I'll probably talk about it maybe a little bit next week. It was a lengthy article, but I urge anybody to read it. It was in the Washington Post, and it was just about, Trump will do these things, and none of them, of course, have anything to do with democracy. It all has to do with himself. And I mean, but it's not like he's hiding it. So people obviously support they obviously support Donald Trump's positions. Okay? He speaks for them. That's his supporters. Then there are Republicans who say, but he's still a Republican. But there's, his largest, that group of supporters. Now, something, and I'm going to throw this out because I saw conflicting reports and I didn't really follow it too much. Last week, I guess it was, last Saturday maybe, Trump appeared at the University of South Carolina football game.
Yes, I heard that.
Yeah, and I've heard both, that there were tremendous cheers and then tremendous boos.
That I don't know.
That would just be interesting. To if anybody out there was watching or saw it later, I didn't. Of verifying which were there more boos or more cheers. I would have to go. I don't know. I couldn't say. Well, let's look at something else. That's really, we're bringing Mr. Trump up now.
Well, I want to look just for a second about Mike Johnson. I mean, that guy.
All right, let's go with Mike. All right, go ahead. What you talk a little bit about
with Mike Johnson? Bill Maher brought this up. I didn't watch Bill Maher last night, but I did watch, I think, his opening monologue, and I didn't realize how much of a religious freak Mike Johnson is.
Oh, you didn't? Yes.
I did not know that, Dave, and that's problematic because he seems to think, as Bill Maher said, that Jesus handed Thomas Jefferson the Constitution. They're just, I guess it's semantic fit. They're going to change what this whole thing of the division of church and state means, and that
there'll be no division.
Right, there's no division.
Church, no pun intended, will trump state in their view. Mike Johnson is really a danger. Okay, and what's really bad is, he's third in line for the presidency of the United States.
Right, that's really bad.
If something were to happen to President Biden and Vice President Harris, then Mike Johnson. Wow. Now, of course, the question becomes: can he survive as Speaker? Kevin McCarthy, whether you like him or not, and I don't, did have had over the years had worked out and really was a pretty powerful in terms of gathering votes, right, for things. Also fundraising. They said he was very good at that, raising funds for others. And the guy we said on a number of shows again too about the polls. I'll just share my opinion about polls. Polls were more accurate 20 years ago. Okay. Maybe I'm just picking a random number. Maybe it was 22, maybe it was 27, maybe it was 18. But the problem becomes now there's too many. Everybody's got their own polls, right? It used to be there was just Gallup, Roper, and Harris, 3 major companies, and they were more accurate. Now there's been some reasons for that have been espoused. One is during the election that a particularly volatile candidate like Trump, people would hesitate to say they were voting for him, so the numbers were skewed, in a poll. I've never quite understood. I mean, I know it's scientific supposedly, but how can 150 people represent the country?
Well,
today's country.
I used to talk about this with my students in terms of my business classes about surveys and how, if you have 1,600 kids, you wouldn't necessarily have to spend all that money to survey 1,600 kids. You could probably get a decent understanding of how people feel with maybe 200 instead. You could do that.
You look at that, okay? Let's look at that. Let's use Bridgeton High School, which I taught at. You still do. It is now predominantly a Hispanic school, correct?
Correct.
So if an election, but it also has a relatively large number of African Americans still, correct?
Correct.
And very few Caucasians.
12, I think. 12 Caucasians.
And are there any Asians, which were never really?
I had one student from China 2 years ago, and that was it.
I think in my 20 years of teaching there in the classroom,
You had an Indian student who became.
I had 4 or 5. Yeah,
Okay.
But not many. I mean, it just didn't happen, right? So the question becomes, if I know what a poll is supposed to do in Richmond High School, be representing, the African American students would be in percentage to the Hispanic students, would be in percentage to the white students, and probably wouldn't cause any Asian vote. But it's just, again,
you also have to understand we don't know how many people would actually come out to vote too, and that's more correct. But it can't.
I mean, I don't want to be overly optimistic or Pollyannish or looking through rose-colored glasses, but I will say this: the election is not tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
There's still a year to go, and a lot can happen in politics.
Chris Johnson wants to impeach. He wants to set up that vote to have an impeachment inquiry. And by the way, can I ask you this? What do you think of this shit with, Hunter Biden's willing to testify without a deposition, but they don't want that. They want to be able to do. They want to know his answers prior to going on, so they can answer it and not look like a fool. I think he called their bluff. They won't let it happen.
Who won't?
The Republicans won't let Hunter Biden go on live without him giving a deposition.
Already?
Right, because they want to know how to deal with that. Because if you only have one shot, when you're live, that's it.
Oh, yeah.
You can't undo what's happened in the game, so to speak.
And it's not, of course, Johnson doesn't have to be fair. He came out, I'm paraphrasing now, but he said basically there was no reasons for the 2 Trump impeachment movements, but there is definitely legal issues to impeach Biden. Nothing could be further from the truth. Certainly, both of Trump's, one was coercing a foreign country. The other one at the top was January 6th. And you still, I keep coming back to that. I forget January 6th, and then it surfaces or you see it. And I mean, just that alone. 140 police officers were injured. 5 died.
Absolutely.
What is that? Republicans just kind of, it isn't. It isn't. Well, it did happen. It was there. It's not.
They don't care.
Why no? Well, I'm going to take you a step further. I would like to know how many don't care, and I think you're right, a large number don't. But I think even more think it was justified.
No, right. I agree with 1,000%. No, absolutely. They just don't want to admit to it publicly.
Both
of
them. Both of them. And of course, then how, what happens? Like, we're still, people are giving kudos to Liz Cheney. Okay. She deserves some. But she has no power now.
Right.
Not that she should have stayed. I don't mean that. Mitt Romney. Okay. No power now. I mean, when you start, but do you stay and fight? Like they say, they think McCarthy will step down before his term is up. That seems to be it because, he was somebody, he was, third in line for the presidency. And, it's pretty hard to go back once you've been at the top. Some people can do it, but I don't think he's one. And he really, he really doesn't like some of his opponents, like Matt Gaetz. And I mean, how would you deal with a Matt Gaetz? I mean, you can't. What? I mean, you can't dismiss, or you can't. Dismiss is not the word I'm looking for. You can't even penetrate the Trump supporters to get them to acknowledge anything that isn't there. So let's look at some history with Mr. Trump while we're there. 2 weeks ago, Trump reached into a Hitler playbook. You can call it anything else. I know, understand. He's not Adolf Hitler. But when you start using words like vermin, I'm going to get the direct quote here. I got it somewhere. Hold on.
And I think Hitler got that from Ford, but
well, that's true.
But still, it's there.
Right.
It seems like everything's made in America, even fascism.
Yeah. This is what he said in a tweet. We pledge to you that we will root out the communists, the Marxists, the fascists, and the radical left thugs that live like vermin within the confines of our country. You know, vermin was directly lifted from Hitler. I mean, vermin, and of course, the effort there is to dehumanize your opponents.
Right.
And just in case that we think that's not Trump, he wants to go a little bit further. He also said on Truth Social, what a name,
Truth Social.
It's his. It is a very sad thing for our country. It's poisoning the blood of our country. It's bad. And people are coming in with disease. People are coming in with every possible thing you could have. Now when you start talking about poisoning the blood, that's directly Hitler. I mean, that's not grabbing anywhere. That's not reaching. That's not reaching too far. And vermin was something that Hitler used in his speeches. And the reason, of course, was to dehumanize those. And just in case somebody thinks, well, he didn't mean it. He followed up with a rally in Iowa where he said, it's the blood of our country. What they're doing is destroying our country. Well, that's not even dog whistle. That's just pretty much out there. That's saying, and yet, figure this out. Support in the Hispanic community is growing a little bit for Trump, and it's dropping a little bit for Biden. I don't get that. Again, I don't quite get. The only thing I could figure out, possibly, is Stephen Miller. Stephen Miller is definitely America's chief racist. No question about that. Brian, let's put it this way. If Trump wins, that means it's what America wants, right?
Sadly, yes. And that's what we have to accept. That's what America wants to be.
And then, we saw earlier somebody said, well, get your passports ready. Then you get a bunch of options. I mean, would you, not you, I'm not, would anyone leave the country? There would be some, I think, that would do that. Would you stay and fight?
I mean, the question is, what type of, how do you fight that at that point?
Well, of course.
Because if you look at Russia, you can't fight that. You have to just.
Well, of course, the key thing, or a key thing would be, obviously, the protests would be centered in Washington, D.C., at the White House, if indeed, So the question becomes, what can Trump get the military to do,
right,
in terms of dispersing?
And what would the military do? I mean, then at some point you might have a division there, a red and a white, like the Russian Revolution.
Well, that would, again, we don't know that. I would think that there's, pretty strong feeling for Donald Trump's support I know, especially in the police community, that showed, and I know, some National Guard figures have come out for him, and there's military. I assume there's support for Biden. And again, then it brings me back to, I mean, either, I'm kind of stymied tonight. I'm thinking, it really bothers me, the vermin comment. Usually comments don't that much. But that's just directly there, and then to dismiss him, and then we're going to vote for the 21st century American version of Adolf Hitler.
Well, isn't Gert Wilder's kind of like that? But I don't know, because that's a small country. But
I know, but it's just amazing. Now,
no, it's sickening, Dave, that they use that type of language, because he doesn't really know that many vocabulary words anyway. But he does know that, and we know where he's getting that. Or well, as somebody said, it's Steve Miller, and Miller purposely has that thrown out there. So there's a message. There's a message there. He's saying we're going to change this country like we did in 33. Or I think 36. Was it June? The last day of June in I think 34 is when that happened, when it changed, the government changed in Germany. That would be awful, because then who can put the United States in check? We put Germany in check, so did the Soviet Union, but where do you go now?
Well, the question would become, again, my biggest fear about Donald Trump from the day he was elected did not come to pass. I thought he could well get angry and declare a war, and he didn't do that, okay? But he did cozy up to some dictators, so it might be that, we'd see a new axis of power with Russia, us. Now, I can't see Russia and China agreeing, so, I think you have to pick one or the other.
Right. There is, again, a coincidence of wants for certain things. But China's always been very careful of Russia. Their cultures are completely different. They do share a border, so they have to kind of be friendly with each other. But no, they can never be outright friends.
So, but one of the things that'll definitely have an impact, or has already had an impact, it's nice to say America first, but the world is one now. It really is. We are the world is there. Before, America had a tremendous advantage. It was isolated from everything else. Europe couldn't attack us really that well. If you did, you'd suffer the fate of the British. The British had a great army, but they couldn't supply it. We had the oceans around it.
And
now, of course,
15 minutes away with an intercontinental ballistic missile.
So, of course, we're continuing to see the situation unfold in Gaza, the Palestinians and the Israelis. I'll ask you, Brian. Do you think, from what you've been following, do you think that situation is getting better, worse, frozen?
I think here's what's going to happen in general. It's just like the Ukrainian situation, and it's different than the Ukrainian situation. There was an invasion, except that the stronger side was invaded in this case. But I think that people nowadays get tired of news. And I think that at some point that too will pass. And don't forget, we don't know if something else will come up completely outside of the realm of the Middle East. There could be some climatic event, there could be some other invasion as a diversion, there could be, all it takes is a 9/11, and the whole thing about Ukraine and Israel will mean nothing. I know it sounds strange, but
I certainly could. No, I understand what you're saying.
People get used to things, and
I think one thing, and again, I've been trying to figure this out, and I think it's also, we have, I'm going to be dangerous here, but I think I feel safe in saying that. We have more Jewish Americans and Arab Americans here than we do Russians and Ukrainians. Would you think I'm safe in saying that, or in America?
As far as immigrants?
Just anybody. Of Jewish descent, more than Russians.
I would say yes. I would say there's probably 6 million Jews here in the United States, maybe 7, and then Arabs, I would guess, is roughly the same amount, maybe a little bit less, maybe 5 million or something. I don't know. I don't really know the demographics, but I know what you're saying.
It's just, the Gaza situation is certainly echoing more now. In fact, this week we saw 2 examples that made the news. 2 actresses, Susan Sarandon on one side, and Juliana Margulies on the other. And so let's look at what they had to say and then what happened from what they said, right? So first of all, with Margulies, here's what she said on a podcast. She was talking first of all about LGBTQ plus supporters who were anti-Semitic or pro-Palestine. And she said, it's those kids who are spreading this anti-Semitic hate. They have no idea. If they set foot in an Islamic country, it's these people that will be the first people to be beheaded and their heads played with like a soccer ball on the field.
Well, by the way, atheism is punished by, I posted this on Facebook, atheism is punishable by death in 19 countries. Mm-hmm. A lot of them are in the Middle East.
So, she actually had to walk.
I mean, there's a certain truth to it. It's kind of vivid language.
But that's what that's what I wonder. So again, what I'm finding for myself, and I can only speak for myself, is the Republican, Trump, MAGA, it's really like I was a firm believer, absolute free speech. That was kind of my.
Yes, you were. You absolutely. Even with the divided we stand in the beginning, you're thinking, well, you can't just cut everybody's.
But now, I don't know. I mean, when you have Trump making, what he say, then you've got Margulies, then you've got Sarandon, who, of course, for years and years and years and years has supported left-wing causes. So she comes out and gets blasted for being anti-Semitic.
Now she did apologize today.
Yeah.
For what she
now
said.
The question becomes, of course, too, how important is that? It makes the news because names.
I don't think that's very.
It doesn't. To me, it doesn't really amount to anything, except it shows how polarized a foreign situation is reflecting on the American political system. You've said before, Biden used a term which a lot of people use, threading the needle.
Right. That was our last video.
Does.
That was last week.
Something I saw today, Brian, and I can't explain this. I don't know. Somebody out there is smarter than I am, and just about everybody listening is smarter than I am. But the idea of it is, I think I've got my figures correct. Unemployment was 6% when Biden took over and is 4% now. And yet
the economy is improving.
Yeah, the economy. But yet, find someone who'll say that now.
Well, Veg has basically said that the problem is he has a lack of charisma.
Well, that's true. Well, we promised we talk a little bit about this. Gavin Newsom and Ron DeSantis, the debate.
Well, Gavin Newsom's good looking, and see, that's the advantage he's got. Plus, he's intelligent.
And DeSantis is not a bad looking guy.
No, he's not, but he's not tall.
No. And that is probably the election that a lot of people want. But you know what? I wish the Eagles had picked up Zach Ernst on the day he was released. Because he may end up needing to have a tight end.
Yeah, but he had to clear waivers first. So
yeah, no, but
he may go to Kansas City, by the way. Oh, yeah, Andy Reid.
But my point is that's not going to happen. It's the same thing. Whether we like Biden or not, I mean, the alternative.
Right now, there is no alternative. I mean, you'd like to see Gavin Newsom, but
that's what I'm saying. He's not going to be at this time. 2028, maybe.
I don't know what you do. I mean, it's up to Biden, and he better decide quickly. And I think he's in for the long haul. He thinks he can win.
Well,
which is good if you think you can win, and then show some charisma.
There's certainly evidence of that. But, everybody, again, we talked almost a lot on the show last week. There's 4 years difference in the ages of Donald Trump and Joe Biden, but it appears to be 35.
Right.
Nobody, very few people speak of Trump's age. and everybody speaks of Biden's age. And I wonder how much of that is also, some of that is they don't really maybe necessarily agree with his choice for vice president. And, but that doesn't matter. Okay? It does not matter. What really matters in this election, there's only one thing that truly, truly matters. Donald Trump, if not stopped and beaten, will be the president of the United States.
And your life will change drastically.
There's no other ways around that. Nobody's going to come in this time. Anybody that he brings in with him will be 100% his loyalist. Last time he got some party people, some people stood up to him, just not enough. And it doesn't really matter that much in terms of, Franz, I said earlier when I was a guide at the museum, we're talking about that as Trump was emerging, and we actually had a display talking about 1968, and I at that point, boy was I proven wrong, but I thought that 1968 was maybe worse than 2016. Simply because of Vietnam and a few other things and the Kennedy assassination.
Well, it was certainly worse for you. If you were a high school student and you were 18 years old, it could be a lot worse.
But overall now, yeah, I mean, it's just...
You lose the whole thing.
Yeah. And again, on that, that shows that often, and again, it may be reflected in this election, except it'll be negative this time. There was
look where we are, Dave. This is 3 years of Divided We Stand. I mean, this.
Yeah, I guess the first night we did. Well, I don't know how long we thought we would be doing this. We may be doing this for 100 years.
Right.
At that point. Well, I see it by the clock. Let's see. Spends less than 1/1000th of their time understanding politics. Yeah. I mean, I think that's part of it too. I mean, that just amazes me too. Well, I get amazed about a lot. No, but I mean, you don't have to know politics well, but the idea of I don't really care. You should, but but even people like, how can you not? But I guess if you're going through the day-to-day operations, you figure it doesn't affect you, but it does because it either locally or county-wide or statewide, regional-wide or country-wide, in some way it's affecting you. And I wonder too, when you talk about economics and we're talking about the unemployment rate and some things, today, we're coming out of the grocery store. We never go to Saturday, but for some reason, I guess because we've been traveling, we actually had to go today. And our bill for 2 people, Judy comes out and says, this is insane. I said, what? I said, we only got 2 meals, like 2 meats, and we spent almost $180. And I think that's what people are saying, Brian, is, just that cost reflected in...
And by the way, Xfinity had just sent out a notice yesterday that their prices are going up in 2024 because of all the entertainment companies that they work with. So are these corporations just going for incredible profits and they're just trying to sock us in?
I think I think that's part of it. Heritage Foundation, yes, that is correct. I used to spend quite a bit of time there arguing with those people in another time, but Heritage is, for anybody who doesn't interested familiar with that, look it up. They are the brain trust, if you will, of Donald Trump. That's where it's coming from. Both my kids talking politics, but he said my son could talk circles.
Yeah, we were raised with politics. I don't know why this day and age it doesn't seem to matter.
Well, again, I guess it depends on family. My granddaughter is 100% political in terms of...
Well, she's
everything.
An outlier, though. I mean,
yeah,
unless you're some religious person, maybe you indoctrinate your kids and say, well, you've got to...
No, but, I think a lot of people, I don't know. I just don't know. I just know that Donald Trump should not be president.
No, he should not.
And we have to figure out a way that everybody can do their part to help make that come certain. Now, Brian, you said you got a couple things coming up next week, so we're going to think about
right
the next
so
couple weeks. So you think about doing another night? What do you want to do?
I completely forgot. Next week is tough because I'm having.
You don't have to.
Okay,
You're going out with
next
communists.
week, yeah. I'm going out with some friends. So Saturday is impossible. It's impossible
Okay, cool.
So it'll either be a Friday night as long as there's no basketball game, or it'll be a Sunday as long as there's no Eagles game. I think the Eagles play on Monday next week. So we'll know during the week where this thing's going to go. So I don't want to make any commitment tonight, but it'll be one of the two nights.
And then next week, you said you also have, because you're going to see your 93.
That's 2 weeks. That's 2 weeks. Next week, 2 weeks in a row. 2 weeks in a row, it's going to happen.
Right. And that's what I said. So, just everybody pay attention to the page.
All right.
And we'll put on.
I'll put it in the community section on YouTube. For those of you who don't have Facebook, you have to go to like the channel page or go where it says community, and I'll put a note. And then for Facebook, which is a lot easier, we'll just post on the group page and say, look, this is what we're doing.
All right. So I'm going to sign off by just saying thank you to everyone. My dad and I read the paper every day, and we argued politics at the dinner table. That's kind of the way our grandchildren are being raised. I don't know. I'm trying to think we talk politics, around our house. I guess it's not something. I wonder if Donald Trump talked politics with his dad. I don't think so. I think he, be interesting to. I didn't really pay attention, of course, to Donald Trump's father, but from everything I've read, he was no prize either. So I think it's kind of in the family. So Brian, take care. Have a good week.
Thank you, Dave.
Thanks for letting me on the show, and we'll see it.
You are
Friday,
on the show. Okay.
Friday, Sunday, sometime
one
next
of those
week.
Days. Right, one of those
days.
Days.
Go Eagles! Beat the 49ers.
I hope they do, but a lot of people don't. So fuck them.
Okay. Be good.
Okay. All right. See you, Dave.
See you, Brian.